So hello everyone. So my name is Adeel Tariq. I'm from Pakistan, Lahore. So I'll be presenting uh, a, a natural experiment that we were able to exploit in my university. So we're moving on from AI to the other big disruption in our lifetime, which was COVID. I guess although calling it in our lifetime is underselling it because this was the second big disruption in the span of 5 years. So it's like in my 9-year-old's lifetime, this was the second big disruption. So anyway, so what we did is we essentially, like I said, used this natural experiment at LUMS, my university, to measure learning and retention losses from online learning. And again, this predates AI. So this is COVID-induced online learning in undergraduate economics education. So our motivation was pretty simple. So COVID was at that time, at least, the by far the biggest disruption we had ever faced in academia. In Pakistan, in LUM specifically, in the spring of 2020, we had to switch literally in the span of a few days. So we had to shift online. That was something that neither the instructors, the university staff, or the students, I think most of all were used to. It was a big disruption. And for the next, I think, almost 2 years, we remained online. Gradually, LUM shifted back in person, and that's essentially what we exploit, that gradual shifting back. Because at one point there were students who were taking some courses online while taking others in person. So we exploit that to basically see whether having studied online negatively affects retention, specifically in latter courses. So our context is also very, very specific. We look at a quantitative economics course in undergraduate program. And in LUMS, I'll just give, we have a statistics and econometrics stream in which all econ students, whatever major they are in, whether it's economics and politics, or or economics and mathematics, they all have to take a core required statistics and data analysis course, which is the prerequisite for the main undergraduate econometrics course. So we have these two courses in the stream, which are core courses. And the main thing is, the thing that we exploit is that this statistics and data analysis course, I'll just call this SDA from now on, is a prerequisite for econometrics. So uh, like I said, we shifted online in 2020. We came back in the fall of 2022. In between, and this is our main identification strategy. This is where the natural experiment part comes in. The students could not choose whether to take courses online or in person. So in the first couple of semesters, we were completely online, and then we started transitioning back in person. And there were like a lot of, I'm not going to go into the details of that. There were a lot of administrative and university level reasons for obviously shifting back gradually. But we did not allow students to choose whether they could be in the online section or the in-person section of a course. So essentially, when students chose their courses or their sections within a course, they did not see whether the course would be offered online or in person. So assignment to online or in-person statistics and data analysis was completely random, and that's basically what we exploit. Our um, comparison and treatment groups are still not completely balanced. They're balanced on some of the most important, I think, factors like CGPA, which is, I think, probably the most important thing. But in some other areas, they're not completely balanced. Again, I'm not going to go into those details, but we control for those factors nonetheless in our regressions. So what we did was we conducted a diagnostic assessment at the start of the semester for 3 semesters from fall 2022, which is when we first returned back to the campus for in-person learning, all the way through to fall 2023. So for 3 consecutive semesters, at the start of the semester in the first week, in every section of the econometrics course, we fielded this diagnostic assessment, which was ungraded. So that's an important caveat. It wasn't graded. because obviously we had to get instructor buy-in from all of these different instructors who were teaching it. It was ungraded, but it was basically testing the relevant statistics and data analysis skills that they should have learned in the prerequisite STA course. So essentially, what we're doing is we're seeing whether having taken the STA course, the prereq online, is associated with lower performance on the diagnostic course in the start of the econometrics course in the start of the semester. So we had like 6 questions on, and I can share the actual assessment with anybody who's interested. Basic questions on distribution theory, probability, data analysis. In our 3 semesters, in our 3 cohorts, we had 300 students. In our analysis, we used 276 of these because some of them were not econ students; they were from other schools, like the business school or the engineering school. So we just dropped those observations. We had like a good mix of people who took it online versus in person. Again, I'm talking about the prerequisite STA course. So 187 took the STA course online, 89 took it in person. And we also fielded in the diagnostic assessment, we had a couple of questions on students' perceived impact of online teaching. So we just asked them if they felt that online teaching affected their learning and retention negatively. So that was a Likert scale question. We also matched this data with their roll numbers, using their roll numbers to their transcript data. So this is why this took a lot of time for us. So we got their CGPA, their gender, their major, who the instructor was, the time since they had taken the prerequisite, because some people take at lump, some students take the econometrics course immediately after taking the STA course, and some of them have a larger gap. They take it like after 1 semester or 2 semesters. So we obviously control for that. The main outcome variable is the standardized total score for the diagnostic assessment, and the main regressor is a dummy, which is equal to 1 if you took the prerequisite STA course online and 0 if you did not. This is just the unconditional distribution. So even here you can see that the students who took the prerequisite course in person scored 36% higher on the diagnostic assessment compared to those who took it online. So once we, and this is complemented by the like very strongly by students' self-reflection. So you can see like an overwhelming majority basically says that online teaching, or they feel that online teaching harmed their learning and their retention. So this reinforces the objective results that we have. So the main results that we have are is essentially a regression in which we also control for the other covariates like CGPA, like gender, all of these other things. What we find is that there is a significant penalty for having taken the prerequisite statistics course online. So students who took it online scored around 2/3 of a standard deviation lower on the diagnostic test compared to those who took the prerequisite course in person. Having taken an extra statistics course is also a strong driver of performance in the diagnostic assessment. This is something anecdotally we've always also felt, because ST is just the core requirement, but some students also take some extra statistics or probability courses from the math department before they take econometrics. So obviously they would be much better prepared. So we find that obviously that has a strong effect. And prior ability, which is measured by CGPA, before they took STA. So this is prior to taking the prerequisite STA course. That is basically a proxy for prior ability, is also, I think, not surprisingly important. That also predicts performance. But again, the main thing is that after controlling for all of these things, we still find like a significant penalty. And this penalty of having taken the prerequisite course online is robust to like all of these different specifications that we try. So because like I said, this wasn't graded, right? So the incentive wasn't really there for students to really put in the effort for this diagnostic assessment. So we had like a non-significant number of zeros or blank attempts in the diagnostic test. So we exclude all of those zeros and we still find the penalty. We exclude people who had repeated STA or repeated econometrics, who were taking econometrics for the second time, for instance, and we still find like a highly statistically significant result. We also control for the eventual grade that they got on the prerequisite STA course. which is again post treatment, which is why we don't have this in the main specification. But again, controlling for this, our results are very highly robust. Um,
Adeel,
the
I
Yeah.
think we need to move to the conclusion and very quickly if we can.
Sure, sure. I'll just take 30 seconds then. So this is just like an additional sort of analysis. So because again, staying on the same point about the diagnostic assessment not being high stakes, so we also take as an alternative outcome the eventual grade that they get in econometrics. We don't find a statistically significant result here. Sorry, this is the slide. We don't find a statistically significant result. It is negative, which is to be expected because we're not really powered to find sort of this sort of result. So just wrapping up, we again robust to a lot of different specifications and different controls. We find that students who took during COVID, again, we're going to classify this by saying that this is COVID induced online learning. We're not going to generalize this. In quantitative economics courses, they suffer because of having taken it online. And this is consistent with their self reflection. So I'll just stop here because I think I'm at my 10-minute mark. So if you have any questions for me or Farid, please go ahead. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Adeel. Great presentation. Um, and we have a brimming chat room with many, many questions. Um, So one thing to consider is dropping these business school observations. Perhaps
Yes.
you could run a robustness check with them, but again, that's just a technical detail. A question from Michael was um, perhaps there is a little bit of a time effect and a learning effect on what the students are doing. What do you think about that? Because some of them. Um, they could learn about these initial tests over time, and that learning effect could be affecting these performance of students over time. And then the second and related part to that is that not every student approaches formative assessment in the same way. So you could expect, better students to approach formative assessment in a similar way that they would approach summative assessment, but that's not the same for weaker students. So that changes the measurement. So did you think about whether that has affected your results as well?
So,
Yeah,
right.
go
I
on.
think that, yes, that's an important heterogeneity analysis that we need to do. I'll just quickly just maybe speak about the first thing you said about including the non-econ students, because I actually just did that, I think, a couple of hours before this presentation. I couldn't include it in the presentation, in the slides, and it's robust to that too. So that's fine. I think in terms of, I agree that could be an issue that these results more might be more valid for the better students or the higher ability students. But again, I think even within that group, because we're comparing across the control and treatment groups, and we're controlling for ability and all of that, they're still valid. But I take your point that maybe that heterogeneity analysis needs to be done, and we need to look at specifically lower ability students too. I think that's probably important. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another question coming from Annika, and it's more about the logistics of randomization. How easy was it to randomize these treatments, and did
No,
students
right.
challenge them, or
Yeah.
that bears implications
Of
for
course, of
the
course.
colleagues about if they want to adopt this approach for further uh,
Right. I mean, so
scaling?
this wasn't an RCT, right? This is something that we controlled. So this was a natural experiment because, like, administratively, the institution essentially forced students to basically be in these different sections, whether they were online or in person. So the students couldn't choose. So this was again very specific to the setting. So we're exploiting that natural sort of experiment angle to it. I don't think that's something that we are propagating that you can do as an RCT. Yeah.
Okay, one more question. And can you tell us a little bit more about the online course? Was it asynchronous, and did instructors have any experience teaching online? Because that could be affecting the learning outcomes.
Yes. So, but one of the slides which I sort of skipped over it showed exactly this like it spoke to this like question. So we essentially separated the early COVID semesters when we had just immediately shifted online. So the first couple of semesters, when most of us did not really have any training or any familiarity with teaching online, and the same goes for students as well. They weren't really, used to learning online either. And then we also look at the latter COVID semesters when we had received like LUMs, like moved pretty quickly in terms of training their teachers and students in adapting to like online teaching and learning. And we find that the penalty does reduce, right? It does become smaller. So for the latter semesters, when you are more used to online teaching and learning, but it still remains. It is still statistically significant. It's still large, right? It does become smaller, absolutely, which is basically why we find a larger penalty in the earlier semesters, but it still sort of persists over time. Yeah.
All right. Very good, Adeel. Farid, did you want to jump in and add anything from your end of the story?
Oh, well, Adeel has been running the show in Pakistan, so I'm letting him handle all the questions. I can talk about the design if there is a question, but I'm happy for Adeel to answer.
Okay. There are some questions in the chat, so please do take a look at those before you
So
keep
yeah.
develop the paper. Adeel, go on,
I
final words.
just I know I'm running out of time, but just very quickly, I saw
Mhm.
Doug's question about internet connectivity and these socioeconomic factors which might have impacted, which is very different from a developed country. So that is absolutely a big issue in Pakistan, and that was, I think, something that affected our students a lot. I remember that I had one student in my class who was from the northern areas of Pakistan, and she had to basically walk from her village to a internet cafe every day to attend her online classes. Like she had to walk 1 hour every single day. So like we had these issues. Like that's an extreme case, but we so again, so Doug, that's why we're not saying that these results are generalizable to not just developed countries, but they're not even generalizable to outside of like a disrupted sort of COVID-induced sort of like online learning environment. But they are like pretty valid for you know developing countries, that sort of context, when the shift is more disruptionary than gradual. Yeah,
I think that's an important point to make when
yeah,
you expand this into a paper, because
yeah,
it may not relate very much to, indeed, as you say, to
yeah,
students in
absolutely.
developed countries, but it has a lot of things to say about the hundreds of millions of learners across
Yeah,
the rest of the world.
yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Adeel
so
and
much. Thank you.
Farid, and let's move on.